My presentation, when I actually first came to the global leadership course, I thought about like, what am I going to do? And then I realized that I really want to help like the community around me, but I also want to do it in a way that I'm passionate about. And I found that technology, being something that I'm really passionate about, is really something that I can use, a tool that I can use to help the community around me. So what I'm going to be talking about today is improving philanthropy with the integration of technology. The problem that I'm trying to address is that organizations like War Child, organizations like MakeAWish, organizations like the Diabetes Hope Foundation are under tremendous pressure to use all of their funds to help the cause, all of it. And as a result, they spend 98 to 99% of the donation funds that are given directly for the cause and not on expansion. And what this causes is that they start impacting a very local community, and they do not focus on the bigger picture or the true potential that they could achieve with all of the resources that they have. And the least amount of money that they end up spending, the thing that they spend the least amount of money on is technology. And as a result, they're quite unaware of the immense benefits it can bring. So just to give you some examples of the problem, I have a few case studies. So one of a good philanthropic organization is FEET, and they provide support for foster children who have been affected by parental incarceration. They have a problem about the current challenges they're facing is that mainly all of their marketing is done through word of mouth. They use a lot of manual labor and volunteers, and there's a bit of a miscommunication between like what the volunteers say, what the employees listen to, and the data that goes on between that. So all of these steps make the process incredibly inefficient, and it contributes to a much less cohesive environment. And through the integration of technology, a lot of these problems can be solved. So another example of the problem would be, for example, the Diabetes Hope Foundation. And they try to empower and provide peer education to support youth that have been facing diabetes. And currently the challenges they face is that they've been using mentors for peer education. And really only 3.5%, really, I think the number was, of their operating expense is actually spent on technology and expansion through that method, which is a very small amount, and it's really not using the true scope of what technology can bring them. And they also have a very small online presence, so all of their marketing that they're doing right now is mainly through flyers, word of mouth, really outdated methods, which are not really relevant in the world today. So by increasing their percentage of, their budget percent of technology, you can really improve what their expansion methods and really increase the scope of their impact. So case 3, and this is an important one for my presentation, is MakeAWish Canada. And their mission is to grant children with life-threatening medical conditions a last human experience filled with hope and joy, and sort of like a last wish with their family and things. So the current challenges that they're facing is that their process to from meeting the children, deciding what they want to do, all the way to planning the trips and conducting the trips are all done very in a brick and mortar way, a very outdated way where it's all done through manual labor and no technology is used. And MakeAWish Canada specifically, since a lot of their work is repetitive, is a great candidate for improvement through technology. It's because a lot of their work can be replaced by certain things that technology can do for them, so that they can use their resources more effectively to impact larger scope of people. So my global actual plan will help Make-A-Wish Canada specifically, and it will then move on to more organizations to reach their clients, the sick children and families, for their wishes to come true. And it will allow Make-A-Wish Canada to reallocate their resources so that they can go to a larger, address a larger sized community of clients, and basically use their resources more efficiently so that the process is much more streamlined. And yeah, as I said, I will later expand to more organizations. So before I begin to say what I did, I had to look at what were the right things to do. Like, what are some examples of people who are doing it right? So I decided to take a look at some more things to understand what it's like to have a good amount of technology integration in your philanthropic organization. So Pathways for Education is a good one, and they have a strong IT infrastructure. They also collect data about over time, and they analyze that data to see where the best allocation of resources is and how to address the problems that they are having at the time. The charity conducts also it also has a very nice online presence, and it conducts online surveys between the students that they are helping, and to gather information, which is then analyzed through technology. Another example would be the Blue Cross, and it's a not-for-profit health services partner, and they have a strong information system in place to analyze all the people they're helping, where to allocate their resources, and it's things like that. They have an online insurance plan. They have a strong online presence, and that always helps basically better use the time that they have. So, as I said, I will be working with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I have been specifically over the past 18 months. And I've gone on to make certain apps for them and really do as much as I can from the technology perspective to help them flourish in their methods. So I've created a web and mobile application that has reduced the workload for the employees in terms of the amount of work they have to put in from meeting the child, figuring out what wish they want to go on, and then later on planning the trip. And I have the mobile application is something for the wish children themselves, so that they and their families can better enjoy the wish experience and make it feel like a more seamless experience overall. And I'll go into, I've launched these apps Canada-wide, and we're looking for something in the US. And we're gonna market this project continuously as in this year and the coming years going forward. So just to give you an example of what I've done, this is one of these sections. The names have all been changed. This is one of the sections that a screenshot of the online application that I've made for the employees. In the past, they would have to send a volunteer over to the children's family, talk about what their interests are, talk about what they would like to go, discuss prospective wishes, and this would take a long time. Versus what my app has made it able to do is that you fill out some basic information about the child, go on to say some more something about their interests, what they like, and the app sort of tailor makes an itinerary for you. Just to give you an example of what it can do, this is what it would later on come up with. It has flight information figured out. It has stuff to do if you miss your greeter, rental car information, and it can generate an itinerary for up to the entire wish trip of like 7 to 8 days. And we can later on send this itinerary to the, this is basically what it has copied the format that Make-A-Wish would normally do. So it's basically doing the work of the entire team for planning the wish and condensing it into a small little application that does it for you. All this itinerary is then later on put into the mobile application, and it's sent to the wish families, so that when they're on their trip, they don't have to constantly check their itinerary, see what's next. They will, as soon as they're going about their day, they'll get a notification on their phone saying, "Oh, this is what you have to do next, and you should head here. If you miss your limo or something, then do this." It has specific instructions telling them how to best have a great experience on their wish. And honestly, it makes it a lot more seamless, because in the past, Make-A-Wish would have to spend out a lot of their man hours, first of all, making and designing this document, which has all been cut down to basically zero. And then they would hand this 20-page itinerary. This is just a small screenshot, but they would hand this 20-page itinerary to the children, to the wish family, and say, "Okay, just follow this exactly." And it kind of seemed hectic for them, because they would be on their trip and they'd be like, "Oh, what's next?" And they grab the itinerary and flip through it, and they'd always be in a hodgepodge kind of situation. Versus this makes it a lot more seamless. So before I move on to my timeline, I would just like to talk about some of the challenges I faced and what I learned from them. So first of all, of course, learning the technical skills that are required to create such a large-scale application. But through some learning, I was able to overcome that, and through just some mental barriers, I could overcome that. Yeah, I can make this large application. Make-A-Wish, I learned, and probably most philanthropic organizations are constantly very busy. They, if you don't remind them as to what your points were in the last meeting, they might forget about you altogether. You have to constantly make sure you're staying in communication and talking about your cause and what you're trying to do to help them. And of course, making the employees at the organization understand the need for the software was a challenge at the beginning, because they were like, "Oh no, why would you do such a thing? It's so much better the old way." It's really not. So helping them, then the next step was helping them transition to the new system, and basically training everyone there to understand the ways that my system works as opposed to what they were originally doing. And yeah, there was a bit of backlash before, but eventually they thought it was very helpful and they switched to it completely. The next part would be security and confidentiality. Of course, there was, as I showed you before, I had to change the names and everything, because a lot of this information is private, and my system had to come up with a way, I had to be smart about how to best keep that information private, even while it was stored online somewhere, cryptography methods and so on. But yeah, that was about it for the challenges I faced. So my next steps, or my 5-year timeline, is for year 2, my goals are as follows. My system can only cover around 68 to 70% of the wishes that they are doing. And my plan is to initiate a phase 2 of my system, which covers all of the possible wishes that they can do. And then expand the phase 1 part to not just Canada, but all of North America, and start phase 2 as a beta or prototype in Ontario, and continue marketing for the need for the project, because currently people in Canada do understand it, but people outside might not. Also marketing not only to Make-A-Wish, but also to other philanthropic organizations that could, to basically show them the need for spending their budgets on technology, the need for systems like this or like this that are tailored to their organizations. Moving on to year 3 is to start phase 2 in the US and expand phase 2 to be part of all of Canada, because before it was just a prototype, then we'll move it to all of Canada. We'll get feedback from phase 2 and improve for like phase 2.5 and market the project, of course, and continuing to not just Make-A-Wish to other organizations. To year 4 and 5. My plan is to expand to Europe in the English-speaking countries. I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Germany because my family has moved there recently, and I will be spending a lot of time in California. So usually, hopefully, some of the tech knowledge from Silicon Valley will work out, and then I'll expand to Europe and expand phase 2 to the US. And later on, I'll market the project to the different organizations in Europe. And from then on, I will start to work with other organizations, saying to raise awareness of the issue, but also like seeing what I can do to help them, just like I have with Make-A-Wish. And that's just my plan for the next 5 years. So those are my sources. Any questions?
I had a question just because I wanted, this is more for filling in gaps that maybe other folks
Okay.
have. So who have you been speaking with? And
Oh.
how have you been thinking about Europe? We're gonna let that go. Now you can explain a little bit. So in the organization, who have you been talking to?
Right.
Yeah.
So a very obvious one would be, another organization would be, for example, the Starlight Hope Foundation.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I meant who have you been talking, like within Make-A-Wish?
Okay.
Who have your contacts been?
Oh, all right.
And then how did the idea of expanding to Europe come from?
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
So when I first, can I just close the door real quick? I've been talking, when I first I just contacted the Vice President of Make-A-Wish Canada directly. His name is Chris Pon. And he told me to just come into the office one day and see what I can do to help him with like my, because I kind of just went in, I was like, I'm good at technology, can I help you guys? But like, he was really nice about it and said, you can come in, see what you can do, and if there's anything that you think you can help us with, we'll have a meeting. And that's what ended up happening, and I proposed this, and they were quite excited and open to it, to the possibility of what it can do. So they said, if you can make it and it works, we'll use it. And I said, for sure. Also, they've been while I was talking to them, they were talking about like Make-A-Wish Belgium and Make-A-Wish Germany, and what they were saying is that maybe if you can talk to them when you go to Germany, that would be great. And that was originally the plan, but that has been now postponed. But that's basically how it's been going. They've also suggested to move it to the US, and that is something that we're currently talking about as well.
Then what I'd like to do one follow-up. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you this year, Aryan.
Thank you.
And on the one hand, the part I want to emphasize is I think families and children will end up having a better experience as a result of that, which ultimately is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. But it has also been extremely fun having conversations with you. Like, I'm so sorry I couldn't talk to the president because I had an AP exam, or I had this calculus thing, so I wasn't
it's like
chats with him, which is exactly what I've always wanted to hear from folks in this program, who are actually able to be talking to folks, while they're also doing their other things in school that are most important.
Right.
So Aryan, this is obviously very impressive, so congratulations,
Thank you.
and you did a very good job presenting.
Thank you.
Do either of you have any questions or comments that you would like to add?
I would like to ask, what sorts of what kind of resistance did you find? Because you said there was a little bit of resistance at first to the technology, and how did you convince them that it would be a good?
Because mainly the resistance that I felt was that it was when I was training the employees in the new system, they were kind of like, oh, this is so much more complicated because you had to do it in a completely different way than they had been doing for the past like 10 or 15 years or so. It wasn't more just like complicatedness. It was just that it was different, and people are always going to be resistant to that kind of change, even if they've been doing the same thing for a long, especially when they've been doing the same thing for a long time. But eventually, it came around. It became clear that like they were saving like upwards of like 5 to 10 man hours per person, which was like clearly a benefit. So they saw that it would be better if they just switched to this system versus working on the same one. Anything else?
Yeah, Aryan, great presentation, very interesting.
Thank you.
At some point, you must have sort of come across the barrier of, well, I'm just a student and I'm tackling this massive, massive sort of undertaking. I'm wondering, is it something you look forward to maybe in your future career, being in sort of in that social business aspect, or what are you thinking for the future for yourself?
I am going in next year. I briefly mentioned this, but I will be going to California at the UC Berkeley, and I'll be studying electrical engineering and computer science. And so yeah, the computer science part was definitely something that I know that I'm going into, and I definitely do want to use my skill set to better improve the community around me. But it's too early for me to say like what I want to do in life or something like that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
you did a
you.
wonderful
Thank
job.
you so much.